Welcome back, everyone. My name is Glenn Wittenberg with MySIP Solutions, and in our last video, we talked about and set up a virtual Oracle SBC. I went through all the hardware, software, and then we actually deployed the OVA into the ESXi through vCenter. We got it up and running. We got it booted up. We put an IP in it, and we got SSH access into it. That's where I left it, and then I figured on this video we'd go back in and go through the configs and get it all set up and actually working now that we have it deployed and we have some access to it. Wanted to show you this this picture here. We did last time on this. We took a look at it, but I didn't have the 192.168.10.190, the asterisks in here as well. So I wanted to kind of throw that in here. And so just for a refresher course, again, we went in and we set the WAN COM, which is the management interface, to 10.30. And once again, everything I have in my lab is just on one IP or one network at the moment. So, it's not very real world, but at least we can play with it and get some and see it do its back-to-back thing and check out the functionality of it. So, so I did put the 10.30 on that one, and we got SSH access into it. So this is our management port down here. Review real quick. So our phones are going to be using the SIP interface we're going to create down the road here. That'll be .45. It sits on top of slot 0, port 0, 10.40, our network interface. The S0P0 is our physical interface, and it's going to come out the core side through our physical interface, slot 0, P1, with an IP of 10.50, and then it'll communicate with the asterisk box on the core side. Its IP that the SBC is going to use is 10.55, and it'll be communicating with 10.190, which is the IP of my asterisks that I'm going to use for testing. The slot 0, port 0, and slot 0, port 1 are media interfaces. This is how we can throw the SIP interface on top of it, so we can get all of our signaling and RTP and whatnot to go in there. So again, the phones come down, send their registration. The Oracle SBC, Access SBC, then takes that information, forwards it off to this interface, and this interface does all the communication with the asterisks. And then when it comes back, again, it hides the topology, and then the S0P0 interface does all the communications with my clients, hard phones, soft phones, etc. So just wanted to show you that real quick. Yeah, we did a little layout here of the numbering. Real quick, I did do, when I installed my ESXi server, I did a 192.168.10.90. I also put the vCenter appliance on there, right, which is a virtual machine guest, right, so a VM image guest. I just called it VMG. I gave that a 192.168.10.105, and then we planned on configuring our SBC. We showed that here in just that last picture. The WAN COM we've got done, so the 10.30 is in there, but we still need to get our on the access side, our physical interface. We need to name that 1040. Also, for the SIP interface, that's going to be 1045. The core side physical interface, we're going to make that 1050, and then for the SIP interface on that, we're going to make it 10.55. So, and again, my asterisk box is 10.190, which sits on the network as well. So let's go ahead and get logged in. I just did a shortcut and putty into my second SBC, the one that we're setting up today. Let me get logged in. And I'm just using the default password here of Packet. Here we go. Let me scoot this over here so we can see what's going on. And my mouse isn't, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, so before we get started on that, a couple of very, very, very important things is backing up our config, right? So every time we want to go in and make changes to the session border controller, especially in a production type environment, right? we want to back things up before we go in and start tinkering around. And me playing around and having this lab, I'm going to be doing a lot of backups, right? So if I break something and I can't figure out how to fix it, I can always go back to the last working, configuration and then kind of start over again, or I can save the non-working config, right? So I have a working config and a non-working config saved, and then I can open those up in like something like WinDiff, and I can look at the differences and see, maybe I changed 4 things and I thought I only changed 3, and I backed the 3 out and it still doesn't work, but it was that 4th change I didn't back out. You know what I mean? So I can kind of look and troubleshoot on that too. So I definitely like to do a lot of backups so I can check that out. So the first thing we can do is we can display our backups, right? And we can just do that tab thing again, right? So let's go BA backups, sort by name, and we can just hit enter. So there's no backups in there, right? So first thing we can do is back something up so we can look at it. Backup config, and then we're just going to give it a name. So I kind of like to use, dates and times on this, right? So I'll do 2015. It's January 1st. And then I'll do the time on here, which is 15:20, which is 24-hour clock, right? And I'm going to say done. There we go. That's done. So let's go ahead and do the display again. And you can see we have a backup there. So that's pretty cool, right? So we can also restore the backup config, and we can just give it a name. Or we can say restore the running or the saved config on there. So if it's our last saved config, then we can just roll back to that. If we've tinkered around quite a bit and saved and rebooted and done a whole bunch of stuff, we can actually grab this name here and throw that in there. And need to perform a saved config and activate to make the changes happen, right? So we can save that fig as our running config. Now it's actually our running config again. And then we can activate it to put that into motion, to activate it on the SBC. So you have to load it in to kind of a memory thing with the activate. It just activates that actual config. It kind of makes a switch over to it. And then you can tell the SBC, go ahead and actually start using that config. And there we go. So that's the whole, backup restore procedure on there as well. Now, on the last video, we did go through the boot parameters. I did kind of miss something there, and so I wanted to show you that. And then we're going to set the target name on that, right? So we need to go into compt, configure, and do boot. Whoops, sorry, I missed that. Oh, somebody else is on there. All right, let me close another session, and I'll be right back. All right, we got that worked out. So let's go ahead and pick up where we left off, and we were going to go ahead and put our target name in to our boot parameters in there. So go ahead back over to PuTTY. I'm already still back logged in. So we configure terminal. Go to the boot parameter, and then we'll just enter down until we get to target name. And let's call this SBC2, right? So just make it real simple. I think my other one's called my SBC. So this way, instead of just a hash prompt up there when you get enabled, it's actually going to put the machine name, just kind of a Linux thing there. Also, I was doing some reading, and these other boot parameters up here, let me go ahead and enter onto this. There we go. The host IP and FTP username and password are kind of set up for like a boot P thing. So when they come up, you can actually, pull the config off of the provisioning server in there. So, when you set up your boot parameters, if you're not using this, you don't have to supply the FTP username and password. It's not the FTP account when you FTP into the actual SBC and you want to pull logs or upload a new image or something like that, a new boot file. That's not the name and password you use. That's for provisioning only. So, I just wanted to clear that up for us. So okay, so we got our new boot parameters in, right? And let's go exit. So we're going to go ahead and reboot this. Yeah, so our target name changes. go ahead and keep an eye on it here through a VM, SBC2. You can see our target names reflected in there. Should get a prompt here in a second. There we go. Let's go ahead and restart our session. And now we have a prompt SBC2. So remember, anything you change in its boot parameters, you got to reboot. Hence the word boot, right? So there we go. Let's go ahead and pull up our doc back up here. Another thing I want to show you, we did set the licensing up. I also did not set up routing when we initially did this in the prior video. So I wanted to kind of show you that as well. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And then system and then licensing. Right, so take a look and show all the features that we have on here. Whoops. This tab doesn't work on that one. Oh, I'm in the wrong context. Jeez, my bad. So let's go back out. Remember, I'm learning this too, guys. So wow, my video just crashed on me, huh? That was cool. There we go. But it's back up, right? FEA, whoops. There we go. Sorry about that. So you can see here I've got, we enabled the 250 sessions. SIP is on, H323 ACP, HA high availability, etc. What I also did prior from the last video, or post from the last video, is turn on routing in there as well. So you can see that that is actually on now. And that was one of my entitlements in there, right? So let's go back over there and I'll show you how to do that, right? So compt, and then system, licensing, and then I think it was, nope, my bad again, that was not it. Jeez, exit. There we go, setup, entitlements. When you go to, there's no licenses on this virtual one. It kind of self-licenses itself. So when you go in there to the system licenses context and you do like show licenses and whatnot, it won't display anything in there at all. So that's kind of kind of weird, but that's the way they had this set up. So you can see here, that I have routing, which is 8 turned on, and you can. If it's not turned on for you, you can do that as well. So you just go set up entitlements, and then you go 8, just choose that, and then you can do enabled. And if you mistype it, it'll let you know, it won't accept it. So there you go. And then, of course, you would want to do a save and an activate as well. And then when you go in and then do your show features, you'll actually see the routing on if it's not there at all. So that's kind of cool, right? So let's go in here. What else we're going to do here is set up our login prompt. We're going to disable the second login prompt if it's already enabled. So a lot of times you have to log in as just a regular user, and then you have to type enable. And so if you're administrator and nobody else is really on this, you're going to want to disable that piece of it and just kind of enable the login prompt, I should say, not disable, but enable the login prompt to go right to the admin prompt. So that makes it pretty nice, right? So CompT, security, whoops, didn't type enough words there. There we go, authentication. And you can click that, you do the question mark anytime. So let's see, what if I got something to see? Yeah, so I have these two here are, start out with the same stuff, right? So if I do a TAC tab, right, it completes it. And since if I do tab again, it shows me what my options are. Oh, there's 3 of them in there, okay? Or I can do a space and a question mark, and it'll show me some of those items in there as well, right? So it kind of gives you a little different view of what you're doing. A lot of times it'll show more contextual help, like it does up here. So it'll show you your option, like your tax accounting, and it'll actually give the accounting state, right? It's not very, they don't make them very clear. They just put little lines in there, for a description itself. So it's not like a really online help. This just gives you a brief description of what that context is. So let's go over here. And where we at? We're in authentication, right? Yep, there we go. So let's go log in as admin, and then we're going to, if we do tab again, it'll show us our various options. So we'll start out with EN, do tab, it'll complete it for us. We can do tab again if we want, and it'll let us know that there's nothing else to complete. And so that is it. And then we want to do done when we get all these. When we change anything in any of these contexts and we move back, we always want to do a done. That kind of saves it, displays the changes information on the screen. Then you go back to the previous context, right, with exit. I think in the earlier versions of the SBCs, it wouldn't let you know that you didn't do that. So you go and make a bunch of changes, and you forget to do done, and none of them would stick when you save activated your config. But the newer ones, when you type exit and you didn't do it done yet, it'll ask you if you want to save it. But it's kind of a good habit anyway, right? So we do done, displays everything we've got there. Let's go back out and do a save activate. There we go. Another thing we can do is create the customized login banner. Right, so this is where we just create a small file, a text file, and then we upload it. It's got to be a specific name, banner text, right here, and then we can upload it to code banners on the SBC, on the file system up there. And when we log in, when we do our first initial login, it'll display that banner for us. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now so we can check that out. And whoops, I already had it up. And let's do test. Geez, I miss. I'm not a very good typist, huh? There we go. So we'll just make it something really, really simple there. There we go. And then we'll do file. Just going to throw it up on my desktop here. The name that it wants. There we go. So now we can FTP in. And use the management interface port. Maybe I could use 22. There we go. Sorry about that. Secure FTP. That's FTP. So, and then if I remember right, it was in code, and then banners. So I can grab. Let's minimize everything here. and just pull up my FTP, and we can grab banner text and throw it over there. So now let's go ahead and exit, and let's log into our SBC again. Move that back over where I was at. There we go. And there's our little banner, test SBC, Glenn Wittenberg. Now we have SBC2 on here, so pretty slick. Let's go back over here. Another one we want to do is we want to set up our time zones and then our NTP clock in here as well. So remember, these are all just real basic configs before we kind of get the system to a pretty stable state before we go in and start, configure some other items. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll pause this video. When I come back, we'll set up the time zone, and then we'll set up our NTP servers, and then we'll start taking a look at our interfaces. And that's it. Be right back. All right, so now we're going to get into, we're going to set up our time zones in our NTP server and start taking a look at our interfaces. But before that, I wanted to let you in on this, the persistent ACLI command in here that we can use to enable or disable that. It's kind of handy. I just got logged back in to our SBC, and I don't really have a lot to show for this command at the moment because we've only really changed one configuration, and that was the login as admin. We enabled that. And before that, when I did a show run, nothing even came up, right? So if I do a show run now, at least that section comes up in the authentication because we've made a change to it. So the more we go in and configure this, the more this show run will just literally just, it gets very, very long and, scrolls on up automatically. So if we do the persistent ACLI, if we do the CLI -more enable, which I show up here on right there, then when I do that, you can press, space bar to continue or C to continue and scroll everything up, and it won't stop anymore. You can, just press a key to go down the line. So it's kind of handy. I definitely use it a lot. As I said before, I haven't got the best eyesight in the world, and it's really nice to have my fonts big and then be able to take time to read everything as it scrolls by, and I got to scroll back and forth a lot. So let's go ahead and set that up real quick. So we'll do the Comp T, go back into the system, and again we'll do the system config, and we'll do CLI more command, and if we tap and we see we can do enabled. All right, so we're done there. And it shows us all the settings in that for the system config. And if we go down here, we might find it. If I'm going to miss it or not, I don't know. CLI, well, it's in there somewhere. It's oh, there it is, CLI-more enabled. So now that's enabled in there. So that's kind of nice. So exit. I always kind of save everything as I go along here. And then I activate as well, especially when I start getting the interfaces, because I test after every change. So it's just a habit I get into. So now when you do show run, there we go, the task is done. And we had a lot more to show. For some reason the persistent CLI didn't run on us, huh? That's interesting. Well, it's supposed to. I'll have to take a look at that in a little bit here. Let's go back in and take a look at that right now, though. Comp, what is it? System con, show. Oops, we got to select it first. You always got to select an object when you go into a specific context, even if it's the only object. So a lot of times, especially when we're doing the interfaces, you go select. It'll give you all the different interfaces that we want to, that we have the option of going into and configuring. But if there's just one, like this default sys-config, then it doesn't give you a list. It just automatically selects it like it did, but you still have to select it even though it's the only one there for you. So that's kind of interesting. CLI more. Well, it says CLI more enabled. I'm not really sure why that's doing it. Maybe my I got to stop and restart my session so it picks it up. But we'll come back and take a look at that in a little bit. I'll try and figure that out. It definitely works on my other SBC I set up a few days back. So let's go ahead and check out our time zone. We want to get that set up first before we set up our NTP. So we're definitely clocked right. We got the right time, and time's pretty critical for SIP. I've done some stuff for some clients with some auto dialer stuff, VG dial, right, based on asterisks and a bunch of PHP stuff on the front end. And with all the calls going in and out, literally, hundreds of calls, right? They do thousands and thousands of calls a day out there. It's just auto dials. And so if you have your time off, even if it's off just, especially like 5 seconds or more on the different workstations out there, you start getting people coming into the different conferences and stuff like that. Things get really squirrely. Your SIP keep alives or get kind of weird, and it'll tear down a call on you for no specific reason when the clocks are off like that. So we definitely, I'm a big stinker for that on the time. I beat my head against the wall several times on problems like that. So I make sure all my devices are set up with the right time zones, times, and they're NTP clocked, so there's no drift or anything on them. So, or it keeps it to the minimal anyway, brings it back into place. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and look at our time zone now. And we don't have one, of course. So let's go time zone set, and we'll do enter. And this kind of gives us a list in here of things. So it prompts us with the question mark, saying it's asking us what country that we're in, continent. So we're going to do America. Wait, where am I at here? Yeah, sorry, to America. There we go. And this didn't give us a CLI more again, so we have to scroll up here. We know it's United States, right? So it just happens to be at the bottom, so that's pretty handy, right? So we'll do 49 for the United States. It's going to give us some time zones that we want to go into. I'm in Phoenix, Gilbert, Arizona, right, which is a suburb of Phoenix. And we're Mountain Standard Time. We don't do daylight saving, so we have our own time zone. So it's definitely, you want to set that right depending on your time zone that you have. So I'll do 20. Yes, everything looks good. Let's do 1. All right, we're set there. So let's go done. Whoops, I'm sorry, save. We're not in the context. Activate. And let's do a show time zones again. There we go. Now we're in Phoenix. So let's go ahead and take a look at our NTP now. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Here we go. So again, from the hash prompt here, we don't even have to be in the config for that. Or I'm sorry, yes, we have to be in config for that, an NTP server. My bad. Config. And then there's a whole separate section in here. You can do the question mark. And you can see it's NTP sync. So they got a whole other context just for that. So that's, pretty much how important it is. There we go. And again, we have to select it even though it's the only context in there. So let's do a show here real quick. You see we have no server. It's never been modified. So let's go ahead and add server. And it's going to tell us for the IP address of that. So we'll do, I think this is the nist.time.gov. That's what I'm going to use here on 8.211.106.151. There you go. We'll say done. And we are done there. I do done a couple times maybe out of here. So let's go back to MTP config. Sorry about that. TP sync. Oh, it already puts me in NTP config. That's really weird because it's called NTP sync, but then it takes you to the context of NTP config. So pretty interesting there. So let's do a show, a little sanity check. Select, then a show. All right, our server is definitely in there. Let's go back to the prompt, hash prompt, and we'll do show NTP server. Oh, sorry, save, activate. And now I can do a show NTP server, and there we go. So we've got, let me widen this out for us a little bit. There we go, now it's not truncated off. Seems we have no delay and no offset on that, so we've definitely clocked right in there, so pretty nice. So I showed you there. Let's go ahead and set up a couple more things real quick. We're going to set up the system config parameters for like the host name, description, location, a couple other things, and then we'll set our default gateway up as well in here. And it's a pretty long context, but we only have a couple settings in here that we really need to change. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let's go ahead and system con. We have to select our context, even though it's only one. And I'm not even going to do the show there. Well, yeah, I will. I wish that persistent would work. So you can see here we don't have a host name, description, or location or anything. So let's go ahead and set that up real quick. So host name, we're going to call this SBC2. And the description, let's call it, let's go ahead and put quotes around it. Anytime you use a space, it's nice to put quotes around it. Some of these settings will take without the quotes and other ones won't. So I just put quotes around everything and it all seems to work. Our test SBC. There we go. And then let's go ahead and put a location in there too. And it's in Gilbert. Oops. There we go. And then last but not least, we want our default gateway in there, right? So I don't know if it's default or gateway. Yeah, there it is. And our IP address, 2.168.10.1. All right. We are done with that one, so let's go done, and it reflects our changes back. It always spits it out for us. You can see here we've got a host name, description, location, and somewhere in here we set our default gateway. There it is, default gateway, 192.168.10.1. All right. So exit, back to the hash, save, activate, and you want to confirm activation because we've got some critical changes which could definitely affect operation. Obviously changing our gateway would, right? So let's go yes. And we can check real quick. I think we can do ping from here, right? Yeah. Ping, let's do 8.8.8.8. We have internet. That's one of the Google servers out in Never Never Land. And I have the PBX up. Let's make sure we can reach that too. 192. So I think I have it up. We'll find out in a minute. Yep, it's up. So we got some pretty good, kind of a core type. I hate to use the word core here because it means something else, but we have a base system here with some connectivity and some system settings in it now. And what's next here? All right, I'm going to take a break here, and we come back. Let's go ahead and work on the interfaces. We'll do both the physical and the network interfaces, and then we'll probably take a break and then come back and start looking at SIP interfaces or media interfaces that we're going to run our SIP protocol on, how we're going to set those up, and then start, we'll compose our realms, and then we'll add the interfaces into the realms, and then we'll do policies around them. And so there's definitely a lot to do. So see you in a minute.